In this video, we're going to consider some effective learning strategies. This is because, without question, all of us can improve. You, me, and everyone we know. So I'm going to begin by telling you a story. Once upon a time, there was a lonely 15-year-old boy. The time came for him to sit his GCSE exams. Some he felt confident about, others less so. Most worrying for him were English literature and English language. As far as those two GCSEs were concerned, results day did not go well for him. Even though the grades weren't a surprise, this didn't stop him feeling down. Let's fast forward some years. This no longer 15-year-old boy now does an English literature A-level. This time he's feeling confident. And when it comes to results day, he gets the top grade. What changed? Not him. He was still the same person. It was the way he worked that was different, and it wasn't easy. It was challenging changing his learning methods, but doing so meant he didn't let his past determine his future. And it made him realise that, without question, all of us can improve. Now, it's one thing knowing we can improve, it's quite another actually improving. So the rest of this video is about looking at the different strategies and techniques that will allow us to study smarter, but not necessarily harder. It's not the quantity of work you do, it's the quality of work you do. So I want you to start by answering this question: how do you study? That might sound a little bit odd, but you need to reflect on what you currently do if you're going to improve on what you currently do. Next, think about, why do you study this way? Is it because that's what you've always done? Is it because that's what your friends do? What are the reasons behind the way that you study? Because again, if you're going to make improvements, you need to reflect on what you currently do. And then finally, and most importantly, does it work? And if you think it does, how do you know? There have been a lot of studies in recent years about effective learning strategies and effective learning techniques. And one conclusion that they've all made is that if your study methods feel easy, then they're not working. So, do your study methods feel easy? Now, a common way of working is to read notes, whether that's a revision guide or ones you've actually taken in class or ones you've written out. But study after study has shown that is not an effective learning method. And that includes if you're reading and highlighting or underlining. People often think that they're making it less passive, that they're making it more active if they're highlighting or underlining whatever it is they're reading. Again, studies show that is not an effective learning method. That is not studying smartly. And the reason for that is, we go right back to that first point, they don't require much effort. And if they don't require much effort, they're not going to work. Students often think that if something is hard, that means it's not working. But the opposite is the case. I'm going to consider an analogy now. I want to get better at tennis. I want to be a much more successful tennis player. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to think, what are the essential tennis skills? What is it that I need to be good at to be able to win more tennis matches? Well, I think this is a fairly comprehensive list. I need to be good at my first serve, my second serve, my forehand. I need to be powerful. I need to have good balance, speed around the court, stamina so I can last a match. These are all essential tennis skills. Now, if I'm weak in one of those, then I'm risking losing a tennis match. If I am weak in a lot of those, then I am definitely going to lose a tennis match. So if I'm thinking about how am I going to get better at tennis, how am I going to be more successful in a tennis match, then the last thing that I should be doing is simply playing more tennis. That is not going to make me, in the long run, a better tennis player. It might make some improvement. It might improve me slightly. But if you think about the time and effort that I would be putting in by playing more and more tennis, the return, the reward would not be sufficient. Instead, what I really have to do is focus on one of those skills at a time. If my backhand is weak, I should be focusing on my backhand, and I should be making that as strong as it possibly can be before moving on to the next essential tennis skill. And I would make far greater gains in my ability to win a tennis match by following that sort of system than by simply playing more and more tennis. The idea behind this is deliberate practice. You focus on a weakness, you focus on a goal, and you work towards that goal. But that goal needs to be very specific, and that goal needs to be very measurable. Me simply saying, well, I want to win, my goal is to win more tennis matches, and my way of achieving that is simply to play more tennis, is not going to be successful. So there are 6 learning strategies. The first one is summarising. Now, if I asked you, what have you done today? You'd likely give me a summary. So that would have involved you selecting, organising, integrating the key moments of your day. And taking a similar approach with your studies can have a really powerful effect on your learning. But what is absolutely key when it comes to summarising is that you use your own words and you don't mindlessly copy your notes or revision guide. The next learning strategy is self-testing. Now, this is probably the most powerful of all of the 6. So research has shown that every time you bring a memory to mind, you strengthen it. And the more challenging you make this retrieval, the greater the benefit. So this is because self-testing improves the recall of information, the transfer of knowledge, and making inferences between information. And equally, there are many indirect effects, such as a greater appreciation of what you do and don't know, which helps you plan your next steps. Next comes drawing. So this is about turning text into some form of drawing. So doing that, again, involves you selecting, organising, integrating the information that matters. What it's doing is it's forcing you to think. Now, this approach can be incorporated in a number of the other learning strategies that we're going to look at. But what I want you to really bear in mind, though, is this is not about something looking beautiful. This is not about being good at art. This is not about being brilliant at drawing. This is about thinking how you could represent information as an image. Mapping is a brilliant way of organising and learning information. And I hope actually that some of the slides that follow, and including this one that we're looking at now, shows that, demonstrates it. But what it allows you to do is it helps you break down complex information. It allows you to memorize it. It allows you to see the connections between the different ideas. I am a massive fan of mapping, but it isn't easy, and it is something you have to practice at. And then the last 2 strategies are self-explaining and teaching. So they're quite similar, which is why I've made them appear, but there are subtle differences. So with self-explaining, continually asking yourself how and why whenever you're studying a topic, and then trying to provide answers to these questions, that's a way of self-explaining. Again, it helps you see connections and differences between ideas, and really that's what its understanding comes from. It also can involve you sort of saying out loud the steps you're taking when solving a problem. So why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why have you chosen to do this, part of the calculation, or whatever it is that you're actually working through? And a recent analysis of 64 research studies showed that, in fact, it's better to ask a student to see if they can explain something to themselves than for a teacher or a book to always explain it to them. With teaching, Einstein once, or was supposed to have said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't know it well enough. So this teaching strategy works best when you know in advance that you're going to be teaching someone. And as with self-explaining, you're forced to select and organise what's important so that your teaching is as clear as possible. Having someone to interact with and ask you questions can only strengthen your learning. So a great method regarding summarising is to use Cornell notes. And we're going to explore those a little further shortly. Self-testing, a lot of people like flashcards. We need to consider what makes a good flashcard. We need to consider how best to use flashcards. And one way we can use them very effectively is something called the waterfall method. So we're going to look at that shortly. There are other things called brain dumps. There are thinking and learning grids, where you make connections between ideas. You can use Cornell notes to self-test as well. So drawing, as I mentioned before, is about representing text. You can do that in your flashcards or your brain dumps or your thinking and learning grids. You can also do it in your Cornell notes. Mapping is things such as concept maps or mind maps. And you can represent text using images or drawings in both of those. And self-explaining about the what, why, how, that can also be actually implicit in some of the other methods such as flashcards. And then, of course, we've got the teaching of others. So that concludes our introduction into some effective learning strategies. Subsequent videos consider or look at some of the methods for employing those strategies, such as flashcards. But I hope this video has given you a sense of the sort of learning strategies that ultimately can help any of us to improve.